Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Mem Amud Beis, the third line from the top. After Rav Chizda had taught us that when a person is finished laundering his clothes and he puts a piece of wood, some sort of wooden stick to hold up his clothes, it's not considered to be a kli. It wasn't designated to be a kli for laundering. It's just merely firewood. And therefore, that piece of wood is muktzah machmas gufa. One cannot take away the stick if he wants to get to the garment. He would have to remove the garment without directly moving the stick. Rav Chizda now shares with us other halachas in regards to muktzah. V'amar Rav Chizda hai kishto di yaroka. This that has a bunch of herbs. If it's going to be fitting to give animals to eat, then it's mutter l'taltil, it's not muktzah. However, if not only can a person not eat it, but even animals cannot eat it, it will be muktzah. Rav Chia bar Ashi Rav Hai Talya the Bisra Shari l'tiltule. He says that if basar is strong on a string, hanging on a string, since it's something that is edible, therefore shari l'tiltula, you can go ahead and move it. Dechavre oser, but if it's fish that is hanging on the string, then since it's not edible, therefore it's muktzah. Rav Kitina. Now Rav Kitina begins telling us many eitzos, and the Mefarshim explain that this is really Rav Chizda saying in the name of Katina, because the rest of the Amud will then be different eitzes that Rav Chizda shares with us. So Amar Rav Katina, that Rav Chizda said in his name, Ha'oimeid be'emtza hamita ki'ilu oimeid be'kreisa shel isha. If a person stands on a couple's bed, so it's as if he's standing on a woman's stomach. Meaning to say he'll come to have hirhurim about such a situation. V'lab milsi, however, says Rav Kitina, this is not so. V'am Rav Chizda, now Rav Chizda begins all of these eitzos with the following: Bar be'Rav dezavin yarka lezivin aricha. He gives an eitzah that a Talmid Chacham who is going to then buy different herbs, so then he should know that he's going to take the longest ones, because what happens is they take a string and they have a basic type of sized string that they use to tie around the herbs that they will sell. And therefore, it doesn't go by the height, it goes by the thickness of the herbs. So therefore, he advises us, if you're going to buy herbs, then buy long ones, because then you'll get more bang for your buck. Kisha be kisha, v'orcha memela. Because again, since over here the thickness is going to be the same, it's only the length that's going to be different. Therefore, take longer ones. V'am Rav Chizda bar be'Rav dezavin kanya lizbin aricha tuna kitana v'orcha memela. This is the same type of eitzah, that if a person is going to then buy kanim, then he should buy them that are long, because again, it's going to be closed based on the type of string that they used to close it after they bundle it, and therefore you'll get more money for your purchase when you're going to get a longer type of reeds. The Omar Rav Chizda goes on to say, Bar be'Rav de lo nafish le rifta. Lo leichal yarka mishum degarir. If a Talmid Chacham doesn't have enough bread to eat, so therefore he should not go ahead and eat herbs, because these herbs are going to then whet his appetite and he won't have then what to satisfy it with. So therefore, do not eat the herbs if he doesn't have enough bread to then eat afterwards. He says about himself, when I was impoverished, I did not eat herbs for this reason. I also didn't eat herbs, however, when I was wealthy. Because it would cause me to have an appetite, as we said before. and therefore I didn't want to go ahead and eat the herbs because then I didn't have enough bread to satisfy myself. Be'asirusi, he says, however, da'amina heicha da'ayel yarka le'el bisra v'kavra. He says, when I became wealthy, I said to myself, why should I be eating herbs when I can go ahead and eat meat and fish? V'amrav Chizda bar beirav de lo nafisha le rifta lo lebatza bitsuye. He says, if a Talmid Chacham doesn't have enough bread to eat, then he shouldn't then portion it to small pieces because he won't be satisfied. He should wait till then he gathers enough bread to then have a full meal. If he doesn't have enough bread, he shouldn't be the one to then break the bread, to go ahead and portion out the bread to the others that are sitting at the table. My time, because he will not then give it out. Rav Chizda testifies of himself, I myself initially would not go ahead and give out bread if I would not eat the bread if I didn't first check the kli that the bread was in, let's say the basket, to ensure that there was enough for all of my needs, and therefore I wouldn't go ahead and just eat bread before checking that there was enough to satisfy myself. If a person who is poor, he went ahead and instead of eating bread from barley, he ate wheat bread, which is more expensive. He's being oiver bal tashchis because he could have eaten satisfactory bread without having to spend more money. If a person who is poor, he goes and he drinks instead of drinking beer, he drinks wine, which is more expensive. Oiver mishum bal tashchis. But the Gemara says, "V'la milsahi." This is not so, because bal tashchis the gufa adif. When it comes to your own body, in this case, chita, the wheat bread is better for the body than the barley bread, and the wine is better for the body than the beer. So therefore, it's not considered to be bal tashchis. The Gemara earlier on Daf Chavtes Amud Aleph brought a similar type of shakla v'tarya. There was talking about bloodletting, and instead of a person lets out blood, then he has to then make sure that he makes a madura to heat himself up with. And therefore the Gemara brought that there was different examples of Amoraim who then took things like benches and fancy chairs and they made a madura, made a fire with that wood. To which the Gemara says that's Bal Tashchis. Abai says Bal Tashchis to Rabbah. Rabbah responded this response. He says when it comes to the goof is adif, then Bal Tashchis, and therefore it's not considered Bal Tashchis when a person is going to do it for his own health. V'omer Rav Chizda, Mar Beirav, the Lesle Mishcha, Nimshi b'mayeh de charitzi. If a person does not have oil to rub his hands with after a meal, he should take water that's from a charitz because they had algae that was growing on it and it'll have the same type of a cleaning effect. V'omer Rav Chizda, bar beirav de zavin umtza lizvin unka. If a person is a Talmid Chacham and he's going to go ahead and buy meat, and he doesn't have enough money to buy different types of meats, then he can buy the meat of a neck and it has different types of flavors. The isbeit lost mini bistra. It has 3 different types of flavors of meat that he'll be able to benefit by eating the meat of the neck. V'amar Chizda be'barav bar beirav the zavin kitunisa lizva midnar abba. If a Talmid Chacham is going to buy a linen garment, then he should buy the linen garment from Nahar Abba, that area where it's going to be qualitatively better. He gives the eitzah that one should then wash it every 30 days. He says, and it will last that person 12 months, an entire year, and I will be a guarantor that this will be a lasting garment. My kitunisa, what is this linen garment? Why is it called kitunisa? He says kitza noe, because it brings good company. It's company that's noe. When a person wears it, he has chashivus. V'amar b'chizdo bar beirav loy leisiv atzifta chadeta. He says the Talmid Chacham should not sit on a moist type of soft reed mat, because the machaliya ma'ane, it will then ruin his clothing. V'om Rav Chisda Babei Rav lo lishter ma'anei le'ushbiza lechavre lei. He says he should not allow a hostess to then wash his own garments, because the lav orach aro is not derech eretz. Dilma chazi be midi v'osi lemaganya. Maybe the hostess will find a stain, something that's dirty from, let's say, a seminal emission, and she'll be megane him, and therefore not to give her one's garment to wash. Amar lohu Rav Chisda lebante. Rav Chisda now gives the following eitzes to his own daughters. Tihabe tzniyosim be'ape gavraichu. You should act with tzniyos in front of your husbands. Lo tichlun na'hamo ba'ape gavraichu. First of all, he says you should not eat a bread meal in front of your husbands, because then you may overeat and you'll become degraded in their eyes. Lo tichlun yarka belelia. You should not eat herbs at night because it'll cause bad breath. Lo tichlun tamre belelia v'lo tishtun shichu belelia. You should not eat dates at night or drink beer at night because it'll cause gas. V'lo tifnun heiche de mefane gavraichu. Do not defecate in the place where your husbands defecate, because they may see that tsoya and they become disgusted. V'ki ka'ari abava ani inish lo timrin manu elamani. When somebody comes to the door and knocks at the door, when you should speak to them and say, who is it? Not in a reference to as a male, in the reference to saying, who is it in the masculine form, but rather say elamani in the female form. So therefore you'll be more careful not to then have conversation with men. Nokit, and he says now the following eitzah in terms of intimacy with their husbands. And I'm going to read you what the Gemara says together with Rashi. Nokit marganisa b'chadi yodei v'kur b'chadi yodei. Says Rashi, Kishe ba'aleich mimashmesh beich, when your husband will touch you, lihis avos leich, the tashmish, who will desire you for tashmish hamito, v'oiches hadodim biyodoi, achas v'acheres ad oisoi al oisom mokim. He'll have one hand on the breast, while the other hand will be up ba'oisom mokim. Then the Gemara goes on to say, Marganisa achu achve lehu, v'kura loy achve lehu, ad demitztayim v'hoder achve lehu. Says Rashi, Marganisa achve lei, Hadodin is referring to the Marganisa, the Hadodin, the dad, himtzia loy. You should go ahead and let him then hold on to your breast. Shetisrabe taivoso, said he will then have more of a taiva. Umakum tashmish al tamtzii loy. But ba'oiso makom, don't let him then have access to it yet. Maher, too quickly. Kedeshi yisrabe taivosoi v'chiboso v'yitztayer. So that he'll have more of a desire for you. Hodar, only afterwards, ach v'lei, then have him then have access to that place. Kura, he says, Loshin is kur tzurfin, Loshin achar is bor, Loshin bor shoicha is referring to oiso makom. The Gemara now brings the next Mishnah. Gorfin melifnei hapitam. Here we're talking about removing, raking away the things that are not going to be edible in the trough, so that the animal who's going to then be fattened before his shchita, it's like a shore, for example, an ox, he'll be able to then go ahead and eat without then being disgusted by the pieces that are in that trough. And he says you can go ahead and remove if there's a lot of teven, so you can go ahead and separate, you can remove it so that the shore doesn't step with his legs that are already sullied with excrement and then dirty the teven in order to then, so he shouldn't get disgusted from eating the teven. That's the sheet of Rabbi Dois. Again, Rabbi Dois says two things over here. You can rake those pieces from the trough so that the shore will go ahead and eat what's in the trough and not be disgusted by it. And secondly, you can go ahead and when there's a lot of teven in his stable, you can go ahead and remove, meaning put the different pieces of teven, you can go ahead and remove them to the side so that he doesn't step on it and sully them with his tsoya. However, the Chacham said it's osur. Says the Mishnah, Noitlim milifnei behema zu v'noisni lifnei behema zu b'Shabbos. The Mishnah now teaches another din. You can take the food that one animal ate, and the leftovers of that food, you can give it to another animal on Shabbos. Ask the Gemara right away, Iboilahu, Rabbonon areisha pligi, oy aseifa pligi, oy atravayu pligi. Are the Rabbonon cholek on the first din in the Mishnah in regards to raking those pieces in the trough? Or are they arguing on the seifa that says you can go ahead and misalik the teven by putting it aside so that the shore does not put his dirtied legs with soya on top of them? Or are they arguing on both counts? Toshma, the Gemara brings the following raya. The Tanya, it says in the Brisa, v'chachom oimrim, echad zeh ve'echad zeh lo yisal kenu litzdadein. Both this and that, both meaning the Reisha and the Seifa, it's prohibited to then misalik to the side. In the Reisha, the case of removing those pieces from the trough, that itself is going to be also an issue of muktzah. And so too, misalkin stadim b'nei hari'i, because certainly parts of those tevin is going to then be sullied by the ri'i that's on the shore's leg, and therefore there'll also be a problem over here of muktzah. Actually, the Reisha, better said, is that the Reisha, they're chulek on the Reisha because in the Reisha, if you remove the parts from the trough, so then there might be a problem of mashve gumois. The Gemara will explain that now. In regards to the first machloikis, so Rav Chisda says that machloikis is an evus, a trough that is part on the ground. That means that the trough was built with mechitzos, with walls, but the ground is the bottom of the trough. There's a machloikis about that. However, if it's a kli, an evus shel kli, divra kol mutter, everyone will say with mutter. Ask the Gemara, if it's an avus of the karka, that means the bottom of the avus is part of the ground, who would say that it is mutter? He would certainly want to then fill in the holes, the fissures that are in the ground, so that pieces do not go inside. So he would want to then fill it up, and that would be a problem of boiness. So everybody would say that that would be chayiv, and that would be also to do. Rather, what are they arguing about? The following. When you only have a kli as the bottom. But if it's evus shel karka, everybody would say that's osir. What is the machlokes? The Rabbanan say that if we would allow you to go ahead and then take away the bottom of the kli trough, then you might come to then take away from the bottom of a trough, which is karka, and therefore they made a gezer and said it's osir. The next part of the Mishnah, we said in the Mishnah that one can take the leftover food from one animal on Shabbos, and he can go ahead and give it to another animal. Tanacha, the one brisa states, you can take the leftover food from an animal whose piyah is yafeh, and give it, says the Brisa, to another animal whose piyah is ra. V'tanya either another Brisa states, you can go ahead and take the food from the animal from a piyah ra, to give it to an animal who has the piyah yafeh. So here it seems to say that there is a difference between these two Brisas. Omar Abaye. Abaye says, no, there's no steer between these two brises. They're not saying two different things. Idi ve'idi mekame chamro, lekame tura shaklinon. Both this and that are talking about you can take away the food from the chamor, from the donkey, and give it to the shore. Mekame tura lekame chamro lo shaklinon. But the opposite, to first take the food left over from the shore and give it to the chamor, one cannot do on Shabbos. And he explains, that's what it states in the first brisa, that you can take the leftover food from the animal who has a piyah yafeh. That's bechamor de lesle riri. That's a chamor who doesn't have saliva drooling down when he eats and doesn't get mixed into the food which is left over. And and you can go ahead and put that food, which is now still edible and not disgusted even by the shore, and give it to the para, to the shore, the islay riri. V'hodektani, and that which it states wherever on taf kuf maim aleph amid aleph at the top. V'hodektani noitli milifnei behema shepiara. That which says in the second brisa, you can take the food that's left over from the behema that's piara. That's also referring to a bechamor, but not in regard to the aspect of having saliva that goes into the food, but rather deloy daik v'ochel, because the chamor, when he eats, he's not particular. He'll eat thorns and thistles together with the food. So you can take the leftover food, v'noistin lifnei behema shapia yofe bepara the daik v'achla, and you can go ahead and give it to a para who's more careful to eat the food without the thorns and the thistles, and that is what the second brisa is talking about. So, and again, when it talks about that which you can give, it's talking about you can give the leftover food of a chamor to a shore, but not vice versa.